Did Ben and JLo's relationship ever have a chance? There's one part that I actually find pretty disturbing. In relationship, there's always a lot of people involved. For most of us regular people, you have in-laws, you have family members, you have brothers and sisters on your side, brothers and sisters on their side, you have friends. A lot of people will throw in their opinions and sometimes try to cause problems in your relationship. With JLo and Ben, it seems like it was much bigger because they have everybody chiming in, and they have teams of people that are getting involved. Now, one of the things I find real disturbing, I'll get to in 1 second, and please subscribe and be my 296th subscriber. But for example, and I'll get to the disturbing thing in a second, but for example, even with JLo, her longtime manager is said to be very involved in her life, like almost controlling her life. And I'm not saying it even as a negative. It's not portrayed as a negative, but it almost comes off as it's almost too much. And she might, as a man in that relationship, that can be kind of intimidating if you have another strong alpha male who your wife is listening to. That's kind of tough. So if you're looking at it from Ben's perspective, that's a little bit tough right from the start. On top of it's JLo. I mean, that's the thing. But so that might not have sat well. But the bigger thing I find really disturbing is how happy Jennifer Garner has looked in all this. And again, I'm not saying it's bad for people to be happy. It's not bad that relationships end and people go their separate ways, and sometimes people are not meant for each other. Sometimes they are. Life happens. People break up. Marriages end. That happens. Unfortunately, it happens. Sometimes it's for the good. Sometimes it's for the bad. But it happens, right? For everyone, for the stakes being so high in the relationship, she just seems like overjoyed. And this is coming from someone who supposedly doesn't want to be involved with Ben in a relationship aside from being co-parents, because she keeps reiterating lately that her relationship is happy and her guy is content with her and Ben's relationship. But at this point, I don't know how he could be. If I were him and I'm looking at that, I'm like, that would make me really uncomfortable. Since that marriage ended, and actually technically before it even ended, she was just looking overjoyed. Like, it looked like they were dating. It looked like how they should have looked years ago when they were married. That's how she looks. She just looks over the moon for him and so happy. And is she happy that JLo's out of his life? And my thought is that JLo's such a strong person that she's probably happy that JLo's kind of going out of the picture, because JLo probably, you could imagine that JLo probably influences everyone in her sphere, meaning not in a bad way, not in a good way, just meaning that her presence is so strong that she affects everyone. I just can't understand how you could be so happy when someone you care about's going through what they believe is a bad divorce. And on top of it, the kids have to be, her own kids have to be upset, because all reports are saying that her kids were getting close to JLo. And could it also be a jealousy type thing where she didn't like her kids being close to JLo? Could it be because JLo's a strong person that she doesn't want to be compared to JLo? And were her kids comparing her? I doubt it. But in her mind, she could be thinking that her kids are thinking that JLo's better than her, JLo's more successful than her, JLo's doing more projects than her, JLo's around more famous people than she is. And it might have turned into a competition with her where she's comparing herself to JLo and she feels inadequate, and then she's kind of projecting it on the kids. And now that JLo's out of the picture, now she's got the kids all to herself and she's got Ben all to herself. But that just, it seems odd, and to me it seems wrong that you'd be so happy that, someone you care about and the kids you care about would be all devastated that this is ending. Even with Ben, that he's looking happy, which again is odd. It's really weird, and that's something we'll dive into in another video with why he's so miserable in the marriage and he's so happy to be out of the marriage, but he wanted in the marriage in the first place. It's a really weird dynamic. But even with him, you gotta imagine, even if he's relieved, maybe he's relieved that it wasn't what he thought it was. Okay, fine, move on. But you gotta imagine that he's still dealing with a lot too. Internally, I can't imagine that that's easy, even if he wanted to get out of the relationship. Anytime relationships end, that's tough, especially, again, when your kids are involved. Now, they didn't have kids together, so that makes it probably a little bit easier, being that all their kids are from separate people. So it's probably a cleaner break, but I don't know that it's even a clean break at this point, because they were together before, years back. And then this time when they got married, it looked like they were going to be, it was going to be the long-term thing, and this was it. Obviously, it wasn't. But I think one of the things that's going to be interesting, too, is to see what JLo does next, to see in what direction she goes. Because one of the things you could just count on, you can almost bet your last dollar that JLo is going to have one heck of a comeback. And this is most likely going to probably inspire her. And somebody like JLo, I don't know that she needs inspiration or motivation, but sometimes when you're down and out, you need that little spark. You need something to get you going again. And I think that's one of the things that we all admire about JLo, is that she is going to come back, and she is going to make quite the comeback. And it's going to be interesting to see, because she's done it so many times in her career where she's been down and out. And she's been, where people will say, okay, this is it. JLo had her run, kind of wrote her off. And this time, I think, again, a lot of people are writing her off because of so many things that are just all going backwards for her. And it seems like maybe she's done. But for those of us who've been following JLo, since she started, she's going to come back, and she's going to do something probably bigger. And what's interesting too, one other thing that I find real interesting is that, like, for example, with her documentary that she did, and she talked about how everyone around her advised her not to do it. And you gotta imagine that her team, like her being the main driver, of course, but also the people that she depends on. She depends on probably a small group of people, but they've all done a really good job in the last 20 some years. Maybe it was by accident, maybe it was all JLo, okay? But it probably wasn't. It was probably somewhat of a team effort. So you got to imagine that they're going to put their heads together, and something big, something significant is probably on the way.